На прошлой неделе Владимир Зеленский был в...
Last week, Volodymyr Zelenskyy was on tour in the United States, and there were meetings with both Democrats and Republicans. And personally, I saw full support for Ukraine from both sides. The only issue is internal political struggle, which is understandable in democracy. What conclusion would you draw from his visit?
Это было, я бы считал, наверное...
I think it was probably the most efficient use of time and resources, because he first went to Argentina for inauguration, met with Latin American core that can become our allies. Latin America is one of the loud voices of the global south, if we use the terminology of Western periodicals. After that was the US, a meeting at the highest level in the Oval Office and a meeting with representatives of both parties in both houses. A meeting with the new Speaker of Congress, who in turn is also a very ambitious man and prefers to be given personal attention, not by phone calls, audio calls or Skype, but seen in person. And of course, I am convinced that he will try to trade his current position later on into higher positions, which are not many in America, if you know what I mean. I think he will want to go to the primaries someday from the Republican Party, so the fact that the president is already making contact with him now, that's very important. It is also important that the president is constantly in dialogue with the core of the Republican Party, Lindsey Graham, for example, a man who has been regularly hosted by the president and in his office in the United States. They are still considering this issue, which has unfortunately become a stumbling block for Ukraine. Our domestic agenda, our reforms in no way affects the decision on the allocation of aid for Ukraine. The issue concerns the border between the United States and Mexico. The Republican Party demands that if the number of illegal migrants exceeds a certain line, that the border is closed. That's currently 6,000 people a day. President Biden suggested lowering that line to 3,000 people a day, and the Republicans said that it was a good suggestion and that they will think about it. So they're thinking about it now, and we're waiting for the domestic agenda to finally get these people to look at the world and look at the leadership role the United States has shown for the last 100 years, when it has stepped in on the side of democracy, standing up to dictators.
So this is kind of a test for the US reliability, right?
Yes, and I hope it will happen soon after all. Although we have to admit one thing as well. If you've been to America or if you haven't, I'll tell you. The last week before Christmas, very few people in general are interested in any agenda other than shops, shopping purchases for the Christmas table, gift purchases, last-minute corporate parties and so on. So I'm not going to forecast anything, because nobody knows what will happen. But we will most likely have to wait until next year. In January they could come together to allocate money to us. That's one of the scenarios. The resource is still there, but it's less. You see that democracy always has to be with fists. In this case, Ukrainians defend themselves with their fists, but we really need American fists for this too, to help defend the values on which America was created as a state. I am convinced that they will help.